Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Lawyer Tina. We are going to talk about marriages in Ghana and all the three types of marriages that we have in Ghana. Do you need your parents' consent before you marry? What are the steps in registering all the types of marriages? Can you register your customary marriage? Do you have to go to court by all means? Do you have to do it in a church by all means? How do you go about it? Let's just get straight to the point. So in Ghana, we have three types of marriages. Three types, and the first one we'll talk about is the customary marriages. Then I'll talk briefly about Muhammedan or Islam kind of marriage, and then we'll also talk about the one that we call the ordinance marriage. It can be the church one, the civil one, or all of that. We'll go straight to the point, right? According to the customary marriage, is supposed to be done in accordance with the custom of the woman, right? If you're going to marry someone from the Akan, or you have to make sure that you're going to marry in accordance with the woman's customary marriage, not the man's customary marriage. It depends on what the custom says. The customs are different in Ghana, and our law allows that all the special kinds of customs which are acceptable, which are not against any human right, will be upheld. And so you go and ask the woman's custom, your intended bride's custom. Ordinarily, the first stage is actually, especially in the Akan system, is called the knocking, right? The knocking, right, man will go with his family, maybe some relevant people in his family, go to the woman's family and officially say that we intend to marry your child. Is there any reason why we cannot take the steps? No. If there are no such reasons, they will say, we have heard you. Give them a list of the things that you have to bring. Usually they're not, maybe you go with a drink or anything that is required from the family, that it will be an official request that we intend to marry your daughter. That is the first step. That is not marriage in itself. Knocking does not amount to marriage. So don't say he has done the knocking right, then you move into to live with him and think you are married. No. When the right time comes and we have to question whether or not you are married, we will say you are not married, because it was just the custom of knocking rights that was actually done and not the marriage. So the knocking rights, the family of the woman will usually give a list of things that you're supposed to present at the actual marriage ceremony, which will usually be between the families. It's supposed to be between the families, two families. The list will compass a lot of things. I don't want to list anything because I may not give an exhaustive list. Clothes, a token of money, which you call the bride price. You pay something to their brother-in-law, very something little. They are just tokens that you pay, and just to show that you have come here and we recognize that we have come to pick your woman and you accepted this as part of the ratification of the marriage. These are all forms of things that will help in evidence to show that, oh, you actually married this person. I always say that customary marriage is not usually documented, and so when you go and do the knocking rights, if it's possible, take pictures. If you go and do the bride price proper, if you're not having a big ceremony that you go and pick a photographer and all of that, even if it is 10 people from both sides and you're actually going to pay the bride price and you've gone with your list, take pictures, keep them. It'll be beautiful for memory's sake. But as a lawyer, not just as memory's sake, but for something that you can rely on one day to prove that you're actually married to the person. If you don't register your marriage under law, yes, then I will go back to the question of, can I register my customary marriage in Ghana? Yes, the law permits you to register your customary marriage. You get a certificate for it. It is not only court wedding that you can get a certificate for it. No. If you do a normal customary marriage, which we now wrongly call the engagement, if you do that, you can end your marriage there and say, I am properly married under Ghanaian law. Yes, you can go to any district assembly, AMA, KMA, any of the AMAs around you and say, I have a customary marriage. We have done the knocking, we have done the bridal price part, and we've given everything that we have to give to the bride's family, and say that, please register my marriage for me. And when you go and you apply, you go to the AMA or KMA office, you fill the form, and then they are going to register for you. you need your father or your mother to consent. If you don't have them, you need someone in the family to come and actually, maybe two people to come and say, yes, everything has been done customarily and we have proved that there has been a customary marriage. And then they'll give notice to the public for say 28 days. And then within the 28 days, if anyone has an issue as to why your customary marriage should not be registered, they will come out to say that. If no one comes to say that within the next 28 days, then it means that after the 28 days, they can register your marriage properly in accordance with the laws of Ghana. The fact that you are registering your marriage does not mean that your marriage is valid. It is just showing that this marriage has been registered. And that will be the evidence that will show that the marriage has been registered. To show that your marriage is valid under customary law, please make sure that there is nothing that prohibits you under the custom of the woman from marrying her. Check that she's not your brother. The family will do all the background checks usually for you. Check that you are not married under maybe ordinance anyway, and that this is a pure fresh marriage, customary marriage. If you are a man, we know that under our customs you can marry more than one, and so if you are married to one more or two more under custom, then that may not be a problem. But then if you are married under ordinance, then it will be wrong for you to come and say, I'm going to marry another person under customary law. The second marriage will be void, and the law will say that you are guilty of what is called bigamy, because you have married twice, and that is wrong, and that is not acceptable under our laws of Ghana. There's something little about Muhammadan marriage in my knowledge that I want to share with you, except that the law requires some form of registration if you perform all your Islamic marriage rites or Muhammadan marriage rites. The law says that within 7 days of the celebration, you have to go with your priest, which is the registered priest or licensed priest, and the woman's wali, and 2 other witnesses to the registrar, and say you are registering your Muhammadan marriage. If you register your Muhammadan marriage under this procedure, the law says that your marriage is actually married under Muhammadan law. And then on the time of your death, both parties will use Islamic law to determine how your property should be shared. So the only time that we'll decide whether to use Islamic law to determine the sharing of your properties upon your death is when both couples or marriage duly went to the registrar at the assembly to register your marriage, your Muhammadan marriage, together with your registered priests and the witnesses, the woman's wali, to register as a Muhammadan marriage. If you don't do this form of registration, then it will be seen as a marriage properly so called, but then it will not be classified as a Muhammadan marriage in terms of sharing of your properties under Muhammad or Islamic law. That is it with Muhammadan marriage. The question that usually comes up, so someone is going to register a customary marriage at the assembly, customary marriage. How do I go and step in and say, please don't register this marriage? The law says that the notice should be given 28 days before the registrar registers the marriage. Within these 28 days, you can go to the district court and file a caveat, a reason why the marriage should not be registered. You leave your name and your details and the reasons. The reason should be that the marriage is not valid. Maybe the person has married you under ordinance, or the person is they are siblings, or there are some blood relations which is prohibited by the custom, or you are someone who is required to give your consent for that marriage to go on, and that consent has not been sought for, or you have not given that consent, and you are not denying them unreasonably. The law says that you can go to the district court, you file a notice there, you invite the parties, and the court will listen to all of you in private and determine whether or not there are reasons why the customary marriage, which has already been performed, should not be registered in the register of marriages. There is another type of customary marriage which the law recognizes. So that one, the normal procedure of going to do the knocking rites, going to see the family and paying the bride price may not be evident. You will not do all of that. But the law will look at the circumstances under which both of the parties have been living and say that on this one, there is marriage. and the law will impute that there was an informal type of marriage between these two people. And these have been recognized under the laws of Ghana in some cases. Basically, it says that we recognize that when two people agree to marry, then that is good enough grounds for them to marry. The fact that they did not go to their family officially in the first place to say we are coming to do the knocking, we have brought the drinks and all of that, does not mean that they cannot marry informally. They can marry informally if the parties have maybe lived together for a considerable number of times or number of years, and the family sees that, and the family does not do anything about it. And not just that, but there are some rites that are performed by both families. Maybe you see in Ghana, we go for funerals. When it's time for the funeral for the woman, the man goes and he does all the rites as an in-law. Same way, on the side of the man too, the woman and his family comes. They do all the rites as in-laws, and they are recognized literally as husband and wife by both families. The law says that recognition is good enough as consent. And you do not just say that just because they didn't come and pay the bride price and then the groom price or whatever it is, then the customary marriage is not valid. The law can impute from these circumstances by the implied consent from both parties that, oh, this one was customary marriage and it was accepted by both parties or both families. And this is usually the case where there is the parties usually maybe they gave birth, and maybe the man went to perform some rites, and then subsequently the woman came to live with the man, and subsequently they have been performing rites in their families as though they are husband and wife, and nobody stops it, nobody says anything about it. That can be imputed as a marriage which is accepted by both families, and both families accept them as such. Yes, I'm not saying that cohabitation is marriage, no. But I'm saying that there are some forms of cohabitation which, because of the recognition given by both families on both family sides, it is not just merely cohabitation. Just living with a person and giving birth to the person does not amount to you being a wife or called a wife. But then when it transcends beyond just living with the person, but then you are recognized by both families at family gatherings as the wife of our child, and when they have to collect dues and some monies, or they have to perform some rites at funeral, right, they accept you as you are a wife or as you are a husband, although you have not gone through the proper process of knocking rights and bride price and all of that. It does not make that marriage less of a marriage. And when it becomes a challenge and it goes to court, the court is ready and willing to accept the arrangement that you had, which the family saw and knew, did not ask for a formal process, and always admitted that you are husband and wife, to be as a customary marriage, and that will be it.